Hey, everybody, and welcome to another episode of the Sell More Book Show, episode 503. I'm Brian Cohen from Best Page Forward, joined by my guest co host for the next 2 weeks, Jennifer Hilt, the author of The Trope Thesaurus. Just a brilliant, brilliant teacher who I've been very fortunate to be booth buddies with on a couple of occasions. Jennifer, how are you?
Great, great. Glad to be here. Thank you for including me. And oh my gosh, 503. That
Yeah,
is a lot of podcasts.
it's a lot of, we're coming up on, 520 theoretically should be 10 years. So,
Wow, that's very
yeah.
awesome. Congratulations.
Oh, well, thank you. Thank you. Well, you are here as a part of it. And so, we're kind of in this new endeavor of the guest co-host. I mean, when you talk to a person who knows the author world but doesn't necessarily know your thing, how do you tend to say, well, this is what I do?
I was referred to as the trope lady several times at
I
20
like
Books. So that
that.
was kind of interesting. Yeah, I was
I
like,
like
okay,
that.
yeah, it really, yes, it really works, I think, on a lot of levels. So what do I basically talk to people about? What I do is I just love to talk about story structure. And I really think that tropes are like the basis for that. So that's kind of my jam, is like how stories are put together and how we can, you know, ensnare our readers as quickly as possible in an age when everybody's got a million other things vying for their attention.
I love it. I love it. And we do have to get their attention as my cat Rocket wanders in, stealing some of my
Mm-hmm.
attention. Well, we're going to talk about tropes a little bit this week and definitely a lot next week. I'm really excited to have the trope lady here. And I'm always a big fan of referring people to. Now you've got the romance, you've got, is it the sci-fi fantasy came
Yep.
out
Yep.
recently?
My Kickstarter just finished for that. And I'll probably have it come out through Amazon in like spring.
Oh, that's great.
Yep.
That's great. So those of you who got in on that Kickstarter, you got a treat
Yep.
there. But awesome. Well, let's get into the show proper here. I have a blurb webinar coming up on Thursday. It's always interesting to
Cool.
think, what day of the week is it?
Yeah.
It's the 12 free blurb tips of Christmas coming up on Thursday at 2. So if Eastern. So if you're subscribed to my email list, you probably know about it already. But go come on by. Jen, so you just closed out the Kickstarter. What do you have coming up these last few weeks of the year?
What do I have coming up with you last? Good question. Working on Kickstarter stuff, because then as soon as you finish it, there's always the fulfillment part of
Oh
it. And
yes.
so
Oh
it's like,
yes.
oh yes, yes. So that's pretty big, taking up my time. I'm having fun doing I've decided to do for my week. I just started a Substack, and I'm doing talking about a different Christmas themed movie a week for like
Oh nice.
up until the holidays. So that's actually really like just a fun thing to do when you have all this other like things you have to do. But I'm like, oh, I get to
Yes.
sit down and pick this apart and write about that. So I just did one where I talked about A Christmas Story, and that was a lot of fun to do that. And just getting ready for the new year with some classes and some other kinds of other trope stuff down the road. So yeah, trying to
Awesome.
tidy up.
Awesome. Well, we'll make sure to let everybody know all those places they can find the Substack and that
Great.
and the YouTube channel before we are out today. So a couple weeks back, when we found out that the Wall Street Journal is going the way of the dodo, with that list shutting down, what is going to be the focus going forward for your book marketing? Melissa Stevens said, same as it always has been, the money in my pocket. So not necessarily focused on making a list, focused on improving that bottom line. Next one over to you, Jen.
Yep. Anne Marie Eber said, I never cared about the lists, marketing, Amazon ads, email list, and doubling email list content for social media posts. And
Love
I
it.
totally agree with her on that. I think
Yeah.
that's like super important.
I remember years and years ago, this is just going to show how long this podcast has been running, when the self-publishing podcast guys teamed up with Joanna Penn, and they had this big bundle that they were trying to see if they could hit the list with this book bundle for writers. And they came up a little bit short. I think several thousand copies were sold, but it's tough. Most of us don't necessarily write in a genre big enough where we're going to hit it unless we have a giant email list. So Anne Marie's focus on email, even to make a list, even if it were possible here in 2023, it only makes sense when you've got that big audience already.
I agree. And I excuse me, I think the list making credit like used to be more important than it is now. I just don't think that that's something that readers are necessarily geared for. Like,
Yeah.
we put a lot of, both you and I have made it, and we put a lot of effort in the past into making a list. But I don't know. I think honestly, readers are just more interested in like a good story that they can access easily than, oh, this made a list or not.
Oh,
So,
right, because we were on a list book together, weren't we?
yes, yeah,
I keep forgetting that, Jen, that the way we first met, because
yeah.
we were on a book box set that hit the USA Today bestseller list together.
It was a crazy amount of work. I mean,
So much work.
so much work and money to because you have to pay for advertising because there's just too
Right.
many books out there. People, that's the only way that people are going to know you're even trying to do this. So I think to focus more on the email list building is a much kind of wiser tact at this time as opposed to like in the past.
Yeah, I think you're absolutely right. And, here I am in the middle of the afternoon. My brain's not working. But you can answer the question of the week over at sellmorebookshow.com or in the Sell More Book Show After Party Facebook group. Let's go into the top story of the week, Lessons from Vegas. The 20 Books Vegas conference brought together panels of authors to share their experiences as the publishing world rapidly changes. Quote, nothing lasts forever, including the business models that did work, reports keynote speaker Sasha Black in a post on Ally. The KU model is no longer as easy to capitalize on. With AI able to spit out books daily, many of us will need to look at different models going forward, end quote. 20 Books used to focus on KU or wide authors, but has expanded into helping authors with direct sales, crowdfunding, making the most of your intellectual property, and even in-person events. Quote, I came away super positive about the future and all the opportunities it's bringing, writes Black. We should be doubling down on what makes us unique, including our unique/preferred business models, end quote. As many authors know, events like this, with almost 2,000 attendees, can also be overwhelming. Quote, to say it's packed is an understatement, says Black. With that in mind, Sasha shares her best takeaways for introverts or any author planning to attend the next Vegas event or any other conference. So be sure to read her full article using the link in our show notes, which I realize I forgot to put in here. So Jen, I'll have to send that to you. But this year was the last for 20 Books Vegas under the leadership of Craig Martell and Michael Anderle. But Joe Solari will be taking over and rebranding the event as Author Nation for 2024. Jen, how was your 20 Books experience?
It was really awesome. This was my second year attending. Despite the fact that I'm just going to throw it out here, both times that I've attended are the 2 times I've got COVID.
Ah, nuts. Oh, I'm so sorry.
Me hanging out in the casinos.
Could be.
So I think it's like good to be like, okay, where, it can happen. You're inside a lot of germs.
Yeah.
But I think like Sasha said, it is really amazing just the amount of other people there who have so much different knowledge. You never know like who you're going to sit down next to and just strike up a conversation with and like meet some really, just meet somebody who's really interesting and cool and in a different. That's what I love about it, is just that kind of all mixing of ideas. And the both times that I've gone, I've really learned about something that I knew very little about, and has really kind of like opened my eyes to different avenues of how our business is changing and work. So last year it was Kickstarter, because I really didn't know anything about it other than like, oh, it's a thing that authors could use. But
Right.
and then this year I was just really fascinated by all the information about AI. I just thought it was
Mm-hmm.
like really, I had no idea other than like my own fiddling with it, what was going on with it. So it was interesting to see people who are using it in a more sophisticated way. So those
Right.
two, those are, and plus it's just really fun to just, like I say, meet a lot of other people.
Yeah. Yeah. I agree 100%. I love how Sasha mentioned the unique preferred business models. And
Mhm,
I think it's important to point out that you don't need to do all the business models. You can try some out.
mhm,
Certainly, try things out, but you also don't want to overwhelm yourself. You don't want to have to learn a whole new thing from the beginning every couple of months.
mhm,
Sometimes you're going to find something, you're going to like it, and then you're going to have the instinct of doing other things. But you
mhm.
don't have to. You can always just say, I like this.
Right.
I'm going to keep doing this. There's nothing wrong with that.
And I really like what she said about being unique, because I
Mhm.
feel like there's a lot of like when you see people in your genre who are super successful, there can be this like impetus of like, oh, I just want to be like that,
Yeah.
and if I do it their way and sound like them, but it is really more. Your path to success is better if you like stick to your true voice and make yourself
Mm,
like, oh, what's special about my stuff, as opposed to just sounding like everybody else.
right. Right. I remember when I first got started with courses, I wanted to be just like Mark Dawson and Nick Stevenson, and I wanted to market the same way. And
Mhm,
I love them, and they're
mhm,
wonderful. But I needed to find my own voice,
mhm.
and I'm really glad I've gone in that direction.
Yeah,
So
awesome.
yeah. We're gonna do some hot potatoes of wisdom here. Jen, how do you choose when faced with the networking and learning at an in-person event? Because maybe sometimes you have to skip something in order to keep a conversation going. How do you figure this?
Yeah, it's really hard. I outline if there's people that I wanna talk to who like, oh, we've been corresponding, online. It's, like, really nice to connect in
Mm,
person. So, I kind of set up, okay, like, these are, like, 3 or 4 people I'd love to talk to in person. And then, and some of them my, like, priority, things that I'd like to attend. But it's funny, like, a lot of times I'll be super excited about attending something and I'll go to it and it's like, "Okay, yeah, I didn't necessarily learn a ton of new stuff about that," but then I'll just kind of wander into some other thing and I end up learning so much else, like, that I
yeah.
wasn't expecting. So I guess my point would be to not kill yourself with being too structured about it, because there's just a
Mm,
lot happening and there's so much you can take away from it, whether it is networking or in person. So just you're not gonna be able to eat all. It's like a big Thanksgiving buffet. So just kind of, do your best to pace yourself and not get overtired, because that can also happen.
I love the concept of conference as Thanksgiving dinner because it's so true, so relatable. Many of us in the States just stuffed ourselves, and
Mm,
we maybe didn't need that muffin, and we maybe didn't need that second type of sweet potatoes. But we went for it anyway, and sometimes a little bit of restraint, a little bit of recovery
yes.
is perfectly okay. Well, I think you got a question for me in
Yes,
here,
I do.
Jen.
I was just do you think authors need to go to conferences in person to be successful? Because this is something I've been talking to you about this past year
Yeah.
too.
Right, right, right. And I do think that there are so many different paths to success. To absolutely say you have to go to a conference in person in order to be successful would be wrong, because there are plenty of authors that don't go to conferences or found their success before they went to conferences. So you certainly don't have to, but there are some benefits.
Mhm,
Making stronger relationships with people who might be able to help out in some way as a co-marketer or a co-writer of some kind, to be able to be in the room where it happens, to have those conversations with other people can be really, really helpful. And just there is something about the energy of being there
mhm,
versus being virtual
mhm,
that can make a difference as far as whether or not you internalize the information. But you need to know yourself. If you are also a person who would rather have that distance and not be there, then go with your own energies on that.
Mhm.
So
Absolutely. And I also think to realize, like you always talk about, okay, how are you going to implement what you just learned? Which I
yes,
love, because it's like when you
yes,
go, there's like so much stuff that you could easily just go and never actually do any of the things that you've because you're already busy enough. So it's good. So I think that's kind of an important thing to plan about whether you need to go in person in order to implement some new things.
yeah, and always, 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 you reminded me of the advice I've given. Set aside time where you're actually going to apply that information, because if you do not, it will have just been another conference. We don't want that. We don't want that. And that
Mhm.
does remind me, I do have tickets now available for my conference that I'm
Ooh,
doing in North Carolina. We're also having a virtual version that is Self Publishing Live 2024. The tickets are available at selfpublishinglive.com. So
what? I'm so
I
glad
sh-
you're doing that. That's really awesome.
oh, thank you. It's going to be a pretty small one, max of 90 people.
Mhm.
But we'll record it for the virtual folks, and I think it'll be a blast.
Yeah.
So, all right. Well, let's move into the lightning round. We've got a few. First, Jennifer, I didn't mention this before, but we have to do some lightning sounds. So I'll
Oh,
do a
okay.
couple. You
Go
do
for
a couple. So, all right, your turn. Ooh,
it.
I like the cracking. The cracking doesn't often get represented.
But I
Uh,
lived in the Midwest for quite a while, so I
oh, so you
remember.
know. So
Yeah.
you know. Oh, exactly. All right. So, my question to you for the first of the lightning round is, how do you choose the right conference or conferences to attend?
Yeah, that is a very good question. For myself, it's always some of it is always a bit of gut instinct of like
Right.
I'm interested in who's speaking there or other people who are going to be there, or there's stuff I don't know. So I kind of so I kind of go with that. And then there's always the practicalities of like when is it and how far away is it, and those kind of things. So like weighing, oh, and that I never can I'm not somebody who can work a conference. My brain is just like sucked into a hole of trying to think about all the things. So it's like then I have to be realistic about, okay, I'm losing the time at conference for working, and then I'll need recovery time afterward. So that's kind of
Yeah.
like those are the things that I weigh with it. But yeah, but then I wanted to ask you is how do you deal with the routine disruptions from conference? Because um like for me it's just a killer.
Oh my goodness. This dealing with routine, the disruptions of the routine from a conference is really rough. I got a little sick just like you this past year. I didn't quite get COVID, but I got it last year, and so from this conference. And so I know that those disruptions are big, but even just leaving the house, getting
Mhm.
away from your usual structure is so hard. I'm a big fan of James Clear's Atomic Habits. He
Oh,
talks a
yeah,
lot about when it comes to your routines and the habits that you want to keep going, don't skip more than one day. And so I did try while there to continue exercising. I went to the gym 4 days while I was there. I tried to do certain other aspects of my routine, but I was already a little off. Like I had kind of been knocked back and forth from other trips, and
mhm,
so I think one of the things you have to do is you have to schedule some downtime before and after. You
mhm,
have to be kind to yourself. If a routine does get disrupted or a habit does get broken, you may need to reestablish that habit when you get back. And so you need to remember what your good habits were so that you can come back to getting the words on the page a certain amount per day, eating a certain way, behaving a certain way.
mhm.
And it's hard. But I deal with it by trying to be kind to myself and knowing that, hey, a few things may slip, but I'm the one who's responsible for getting the good habits back into my life.
Right. Yep. I totally agree. And building in, like you say, some flex time. Like
Yeah.
I don't when I come back, I don't do like have anything planned for that weekend, like nothing.
Yes. Smart. Very,
Because
very smart.
yeah,
Next question I've got. So we've got the holiday period, this will be released, it'll be just about December. Is the holiday period a good time or a bad time to launch a new book or series, in your opinion?
in my opinion, I don't think it's a good time unless it's like towards the end of a series and you have
Mm,
established, but if it's like brand new, I wouldn't launch it now. And the reason why is because there's so many trad publishers. Like, I can't believe like my inbox is just like flooded with like my
mm-hmm.
favorite trad authors releasing. So then you're like competing against all of those kind of higher budget um, authors. So I don't think it's great for that. And then the other thing, the caveat to that would be like if you're writing like holiday romance, then yes, this is the time of year to release those. And
Yeah.
you can like never really release those too early. Like I would, when I have done those, I do them earlier. I would actually even release it earlier than like December. But I think it's just really hard. You don't need anything to make your life harder. And if you're going to have to battle with more budgeting dollars, then I would just wait and do it after the new year for a new series.
Yeah. Yeah. No, that makes complete sense. For sure. All right. I think you got a question for me in here.
Yes. How should authors plan on running holiday sales or discounts, or should they? What do you think? What's your thoughts on it?
So, when it comes to holiday sales and discounts, I did just do a webinar with Amazon about this, and they, it's always funny. I'm always going to recommend what is going to be the most profitable for authors. And so even if Amazon says, "Hey, can we talk about brand ads? Can we do these other things?" I'm always going to be like, "So, maybe, but most authors you're not going to necessarily find a lot with holiday discounts. If you happen to score a BookBub or a Zoe Bub or any of these kind of things, maybe it's still worth a shot. But if you don't have these bigger promotions, that you might get lost in the shuffle a little, just like you said, Jen, getting a ton of trad emails for trad authors who are releasing things. And so if you are going to run a discount, I would run it after Christmas, when people have gotten new Kindles, when people have gotten new KU accounts.
Mhm.
Then I would consider it. But I would say probably you are not going to want to do it right in the heart of the holidays. Full price is better in the
Mhm.
holidays. People are buying things. You don't need to discount. Full price is the way to go.
Mhm. Awesome.
Get that full amount of money. You've
Yeah.
earned it. You
Yeah.
deserve it.
Exactly.
Um, so last question to
Mhm.
round out our holiday fun.
Yep.
So we've already talked about a few things, whether or not you should launch, whether you should run holiday sales. How do you think authors can use the holidays to promote their books or their series?
I am a huge believer in email swaps,
Mm,
like newsletter swaps. I think those are huge. And the other thing tied in with that is there's a bunch of things you can use through BookFunnel in the same way,
mm.
finding other authors and similar things. So those, I think, just working the email list and trying to get it. Where you're working with other people, your list, and then trying to expand it through some cross promotion are really two good ways to do it.
And I love that you brought up working with other people. It's so tempting. It's self-publishing, right? We do it
Mhm.
ourselves, but
Right.
and this goes back to all the event conference stuff. Connecting with other authors, you learn ways that you can market together, where it doesn't have to be just this solo endeavor,
Mhm.
and it can be so nice, especially when you couple it with email.
Mhm.
Absolutely, looking at BookFunnel, looking at Story Origin, seeing what opportunities there are to connect with other folks. Jen and I met through working on a box set together, as I
Yeah,
had to be reminded of. But um, I did know that at some point, just not on this particular day.
that's
And
okay.
so here we are,
Mhm.
years later. Jen's here on the podcast for 2 episodes, in part because we both saw it working with other authors like us, and now here we are.
Yeah, and I've noticed that, I think I've heard other authors say, "Oh, I don't want to like, you know, think of it as competition, kind of cross promo with your list." But I've found that the people on my list are like, they like a recommendation from you from somebody you know with a similar thing that they're already reading. I've had people say, "Thanks, oh, thanks for telling me about this other book." So I think to maybe look at it more in a positive light than in just kind of like, oh, it's taking sales away, because it's all how you look at it. And like you say,
Yeah.
the working together, it makes it lighter. It's just nice.
Yeah. No, it strikes me that one of the big things that distinguishes you in talking about tropes is that you talk about tropes as a function of relationship,
Hmm.
and that a lot of tropes are how one character relates to another. And
Hmm.
here we are talking about, well, how one author relates to another, how we're able to work together and not compete, and
Hmm.
all try to strive for better together.
Hmm.
The trope of marketing that we want to promote is,
Right.
we're in this together rather than against each other.
Right. And being like you say, your authentic self, as opposed to like, it's not a buy my book, so kind of thing.
Love it. Love it. Absolutely. So, Jen, we need a question of the week. Now, we've been talking about 20 books and conferences. We've been talking about the holidays.
Hmm.
I'm definitely interested in the conference angle. If we were going to ask a question about conferences, what do you think we would ask?
Oh, I know. Repeat versus first time.
Hmm.
Because
Okay.
it's
So,
always kind of interesting. I personally find almost the first time I go to a conference is always like my best experience. And I don't know if that's just because it's all new or whatever. But anyway, so anyway,
yeah.
yeah, what do you think about that?
Yeah, I like that. So, when you've gone to a conference once, have you had a different or better experience
Mhm.
than when you have gone a second time or more? I'm going to write that down. When you have gone to a conference. Usually Claire would write this
Oh,
too for a first time. Has
well, like,
it
there's
been
people that
better?
go to the same conferences year after year, and then there's some people I've met that like they don't ever do repeat conferences.
Right.
So it's just
Right.
really interesting ways. And then there's the obviously in the middle you can do bits of both. So I always think that's kind of interesting.
Yeah, no, I really like that question. You can answer the question of the week over at the Sell More Book Show website, sellmorebookshow.com, or at the Sell More Book Show after party. Jen, how do people find your Substack and your YouTube channel?
Um, Substack and YouTube channel are both under Trope Talk, all one word.
Trope
So you
Talk,
could,
okay.
yeah, so you could type in those, and you should go to both of those. So yeah.
Nice. And how do people find your wonderful Trope Thesaurus books?
Oh, thank you, Brian. Um, you can go to my website at www.jenniferhilt.com. They're all on Amazon too. Not the fantasy sci-fi one, but the other three.
Very, very nice. Awesome. And I got my blurb webinar coming up on Thursday,
Yeah.
so drop on by Thursday at 2 p.m. Eastern Time.
Right.
Jen's coming back for another episode. Do you have any last, we talked conferences, holiday. Do you have any last words of wisdom you want to share related to those two topics to our wonderful listeners here today?
I think no, the only thing I would say is don't get discouraged, and like this period between Thanksgiving and New Year's will pass in terms of creativity and obligations and things. So don't feel like, this is going to be the rest of your writing life, is like this kind of crazy period that we have now.
I love it. I love it. Great advice. For Jennifer Hilt, I'm Brian Cohen.
Yeah, thanks for
Uh,
having me.
of course, Jen, you'll be back next week too. So everybody listening, have a great week of book selling, and we'll be back next week for episode 504. Bye.